What is happening in J Gamer Dude here, and I'm going to be talking about Seirei Gensouki, which is a anime that I just recently finished watching. And so I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on it because I think it's usually I think it actually hasn't been that long since I talked about the previous show that I watched. So let me just kind of really sort of jump into it and just kind of talk about the show itself. So it's pretty much a fantasy isekai. And the only reason I even found out about this anime is because there was a web game that was actually advertised to me, and so I looked it up and I was like, is there an anime adaptation to this? And there was. So I was like, okay, let's look into this and actually watch it. So I didn't know what I was going to be getting into. So as far as the show goes, let's kind of start with the OP and EP. So the opening is a painfully average one for something that, if I were to ask you, okay, what do you expect an isekai's opening to be, most likely you kind of already have an idea of exactly what to expect. But the ending theme is actually really good. I actually quite liked it. From the initial sting, it kind of like gripped me from the first couple of seconds of like the ending theme. So if nothing else, opening theme, nothing to write home about. Ending theme, very good. I actually quite very much liked it. So effectively, this is an isekai, and you might be thinking of what kind. So this is the kind of isekai where the main character does reincarnate in a fantasy world, obviously, but he retains his memories and his knowledge of the previous world. So being 20 years of age, the main character, Haruto, he is 20 years old when he dies in the bus, and then train crashes into it, dies, and gets reincarnated into a fantasy world effectively as a child and kind of grows up. So he has one set of memories from before he dies, and also his additional memories from when he is born and grows up in this sort of fantasy world. And he does also keep like his like abilities of like being able to use a sword. So he did use a sword like martial art in the real world before he obviously died. Now, this is kind of where I'm going to go on a hill and tell you that this is actually a really bad show, because there's a lot that I did not enjoy about it. Specifically, one of the first few things was how most of the characters are driven because of classism. So things like the difference between rich and poor, and how the poor are seen as slaves to the rich. And that like if the rich did anything wrong, they could just pay their money way out, like just pay their way out of it. So the main character helps out the princess of the kingdom, and I'm going to try and not get into too much spoilers, but effectively gets a shortcut into going into a magic school by honor of the king for saving his daughter and things like that. And the politics in like there's a lot of like politics in the show, and that's usually like where that classism differentiation comes from, because like everyone in this, so when he gets into the magic school, he's like, okay, everyone kind of treats him negatively because he's like, oh, he's the poor guy, whereas everyone else here is actually rich and he's just in here because of the favor from the king, and kind of just things like that. They bang on about it way too long that it's almost kind of really annoying. And I mean, like, okay, maybe the shortcut into, like, the magic school was kind of one thing. Being like, okay, like, there's one such shortcut. And, of course, like, the main character can use a very specific power, I guess, called spirit arts that not a lot of people can use. So I'm like, okay, main character is kind of special. Gotcha. And then in between episodes, it skips large portions or sections of his life to the point where it feels like there's time skips in between episodes, and that kind of feels a little bit disjointed. Like, it might be that between episode 1 and 2, it might be like a week, but then like between episode 2 and 3, it might be a month, and then later on, it literally becomes a year in between episodes, which is kind of like, okay, why are you doing this? Because like, is this guy's life not interesting enough that you need to skip this much? But I digress. Now, the main character learns a lot in the school, and so I want to say a couple years, no, 2 to 3 years pass of him being in that school. Was it 2 years? And that happens across 3 to 4 episodes. 3 or 4 episodes, yeah, that sounds about right. Something along those lines. Learns about a bunch of different things from reading books that is from the library of his teacher. And then there are some, and then eventually leaves and then journeys out, which then kind of like, I suppose kind of is like where the rest of the plot happens, though I say plot very tentatively because it doesn't feel like the show has any real plot going on, or any real connective tissue between the events of each of the episodes, and hell, it doesn't even feel like it has much of an ending either. And then there's like levels of contrivance upon contrivance that's like kind of explained after the fact. Like, for example, the fact that slavery is in this show, because of course, I feel like that's kind of a little bit shorthand because you need something to happen. So runs into a slave that is out to kill him after he, leaves the school and goes on his journey, and then realizes, oh, this, the person that's trying to kill him has a slave collar, and he just so happened to read an article at some point in a book teaching him how to be able to disarm that sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. Okay, that seems a little bit convenient. And then after a few more episodes, he gets something called a space-time cache, whatever, where he can just store things in an alternative dimension and carry unlimited amounts of things with him. And at that point, I was just kind of like, okay, clearly they're building this guy up to be incredibly overpowered for no reason, but there's like levels of contrivance upon contrivance of like, now he can carry everything with him. He has a very specific OP power that only he can use and was able to from a very young age, almost like a sort of chosen one sort of type of scenario. And then I suppose we can throw away the whole like removing slave collar thing, I guess, though that just is kind of like explained in like a 5-second flashback anyways. So I'm like, okay, all of this stuff has happened, and there's massive time skips in between episodes, up to about a year at times as well. So I'm like, okay, is there anything that the show does that's actually good? And the hateable characters, like the villains, whatever you want to call them, the antagonists across the series, because there's no single antagonist at all. At least if nothing else, they're easily hateable because they're so cartoonishly hateable. Like, you would need to be absolutely insane to not see these guys as obviously the bad guys. Like, the writing is just so obvious that it's just not even funny. So they can make characters hateable. That's a good thing, at least, I suppose. And then later on, it's revealed that the main character is royalty, and then some exposition happened, and everything really just kind of jumps up. Honestly, like, yeah, there's a lot that I don't like about the show, and I do genuinely think that this is a bad show. If only that, the main character had, at least, I don't know, been a bit more interesting, but I feel like everything was just thrown on to him being like, only you can use this power, your royalty, you've got a bunch of other junk that you don't know about you, so we're gonna tell you instead of show you or learn about it in some other way. It just feels like a lot of writing shorthand. And also the ending was incredibly rushed. The last 2 episodes kind of had to make it feel like some sort of conclusive finale, but obviously it feels like they were gonna do a lot more, but they never did. And I feel like the stuff at the end, the last 2 episodes, kind of could have become something more, and had they only focused on that and made that the entire show, it could have been really good. But it just kind of like fell apart by the end and leaves nothing but confusion, honestly. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, the bad is pretty much, I think, just about everything about the show I don't think is good. As far as things that are good, is just the ending theme and the fact that the villainous characters are infinitely hateable, for reasons that are pretty bloody obvious when you watch the show, because like they're openly like, classist against the guy. So like they're openly like, okay, this guy is poor, haha, shame, shame on his name, sort of thing. And that's really about the size of it. Or the weird cloak and dagger looking guy that obviously looks like a villain. Like, if you look at the guy, you can't be like, this guy can't not be a villain, because all he does is wear a trench, not even a trench coat, just wears a literal cloak the entire time, and you just see his face under the cloak with the sort of sneer almost all the time. But I digress. I'm gonna be putting Seirei Gensouki in my anime list at a 4 out of 10. It's a bad show, and it would have been much lower had it not been for the ending. The ending really was carrying. The ending theme was really carrying the show for me. But yeah, that were my thoughts on the show. But let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. I tried to like write my thoughts down before actually talking about it, because normally I can say things off the top of my head, which is why this might seem very much a lot more different. Let me know what you guys think about it. But I didn't write up a script, I just put my ideas down, and now I've just kind of read out like my ideas in a random order to try and get some ideas across of like what I think about the show. But let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. Of course, like, let me know what you guys think of the show as well. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to aim for 200 subs by the end of the year, and I do want my videos to go out to more people, so hopefully more people who have seen the show can comment on it, and also comment on whether or not like I actually did okay with like just trying to get my thoughts out through notes rather than actually writing any sort of script, but not doing it so off the top of my head that I can't think of like proper examples or anything like that. But with all that said and done, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.